Muad'Dib tells us in A Time of Reflection that his first collisions with Arcane necessities were the true beginnings of his education. He learned then how to pull the sand for its weather, learned the language of the wind needles stinging his skin, learned how the nose can buzz with sand itch, and how to gather his body's precious moisture around him to guard it and preserve it. As his eyes assumed the blue of the Abad, he learned the Chekopsa way. Stilgar's preface to Muad'Dib the Man by the Princess Irulan. Stilgar's troop, returning to the Seitch with its Ustrays from the desert, climbed out of the basin in the waning light of the first moon. The robed figures hurried with the smell of home in their nostrils. Dawn's gray line behind them was brightest at the notch in their horizon calendar that marked the middle of autumn, the month of Caprock. Wind raked dead leaves strewed the cliff base where the siege shorn had been gathering them. But the sound of the troops' passage, except for the occasional blunderings by Paul and his mother, could not be distinguished from the natural sounds of the night. Paul wiped sweat-caked dust from his forehead, felt a tug at his arm, heard Chinese voice hissing, "Do as I told you. Bring the fold of your hood down over your forehead. Leave only the eyes exposed. You waste moisture." A whispered command behind them demanded silence. "The desert hears you." A bird chirped from the rocks high above them. The troop stopped, and Paul sensed abrupt tension. There came a faint thumping from the rocks, a sound no louder than mice jumping in the sand. Again, the bird chirruped. A stir passed through the troops' ranks, and again, the mouse thumping pecked its way across the sand. Once more, the bird chirped. The troop resumed its climb up into a crack in the rocks, but there was stillness of breath about the Fremen now that filled Paul with caution, and he noted covert glances toward Chani, the way she seemed to withdraw, pulling in upon herself. There was rock underfoot now, a faint grave swishing of robes around them, and Paul sensed a relaxing of discipline, but still that quiet of the person about Chani and the others. He followed a shadow shape, up steps, a turn, more steps, into a tunnel, past two moisture-sealed doors, and into a globe-lighted narrow passage with yellow rock walls and ceiling. All around him, Paul saw the Fremen drawing back their hoods, removing their nose plugs, breathing deeply. Someone sighed. Paul looked for Chani, found that she had left his side. He was hemmed in by a press of robed bodies. Someone jostled him, said, "Excuse me, Usul. What a crush. It's always this way." On his left, the narrow bearded face of one called Farrak turned toward Paul. The stained eye pits and blue darkness of eyes appeared even darker under the old globes. "Throw off your hood, Usul," Farrak said. "You're home." And helped Paul, releasing the hood catch, elbowing a space around them. Paul slipped out his nose plugs, swung the mouth baffle aside. The odor of the place assailed him. Unwashed bodies, distillate esters of reclaimed water and wastes. Everywhere, the sour effluvia of humanity, with over it all a turbulence of spice and spice-like harmonics. "Why are we waiting for, Rock?" Paul asked. "For the Reverend Mother, I think. You heard the message. Poor Chani." "Poor Chani?" Paul asked himself. He looked around, wondering where she was, where his mother had got to in all the rush. Farrak took a deep breath. "The smells of home," he said. Paul saw that the man was enjoying the stink of this air. There was no irony in his tone. He heard his mother cough then, and her voice came back to him through the rest of the troop. "How rich the odors of your Seitch Tabr. I see you do much working with the spice. You make paper, plastics, and isn't that chemical explosives? You know this from what you smell?" It was another man's voice, and Paul realized she was speaking for his benefit, that she wanted him to make a quick acceptance of this assault on his nostrils. There came a buzz of activity at the head of the troop, and a prolonged, indrawn breath that seemed to pass through the Fremen, and Paul heard hushed voices back down the line. "It's true then. Liet is dead." Liet, Paul thought. Then Chani, daughter of Liet. The pieces fell together in his mind. Liet was the Fremen name of the planetologist. Paul looked at Farrak, asked, "Is it the Liet known as Keynes?" "There is only one Liet," Farrak said. Paul turned, stared at the robed back of a Fremen in front of him. "Then Liet Keynes is dead," he thought. "It was Harkonnen treachery," someone hissed. "They made it seem an accident. Lost in the desert. A copter crash." Paul felt a burst of anger. The man who had befriended them, helped save them from the Harkonnen hunters. The man who had sent his Fremen cohorts searching for 2 strays in the desert. Another victim of the Harkonnens. Does Usul hunger yet for revenge? Farak asked. Before Paul could answer, there came a low call, and the troop swept forward into a wire chamber, carrying Paul with them. He found himself in an open space confronted by Stilgar and a strange woman wearing a flowing wraparound garment of bright orange and green. Her arms were bare to the shoulders, and you could see she wore no stillsuit. Her skin was a pale olive. Dark hair swept back from her high forehead, throwing emphasis on sharp cheekbones and aquiline nose between the dense darkness of her eyes. She turned toward him, and Paul saw golden rings strayed with water alleys dangling from her ears. This bested my Jamis? She demanded. Be silent, Hara. Stilgar said. It was Jamis's doing. He invoked the Arhan. He's not but a boy, she said. She gave her head a sharp shake from side to side, setting the wire tallies jingling. My children made thoughtless by another child. Surely 'twas an accident. Usul, how many years have you? Stilgar asked. 15 standard. All said. Stilgar swept his eyes over the troop. Is there one among you who cares to challenge me? Silence. Stilgar looked at the woman. Until I've learned his weirding ways, I'd not challenge him. She returned his stare. But you saw the stranger woman who went with Chai to the Reverend Mother? Stilgar asked. She is not Frayne Sayadina, mother to this lad. The mother and son are masters of the weirding ways of battle. Lisan al-Gaib, the woman whispered. Her eyes held awe as she turned them back toward Paul. The legend again, Paul thought. Perhaps. Stilgar said. It hasn't been tested, though. He returned his attention to Paul. Usul, it's our way that you've now the responsibility for Jamis's woman here and for his 2 sons. His yali, his quarters, are yours. His coffee service is yours. And this, his woman. Paul studied the woman, wondering, why isn't she mourning her man? Why does she show no hate for me? Abruptly, he saw that the Fremen were staring at him, waiting. Someone whispered, There is work to do. Say me how you accept her. Stilgar said, Do you accept Hara as woman or servant? Hara lifted her arms, slowly turning on one heel. I am still young, Usul. It is said I still look as young as when I was with Geoff, before Jamis bested him. Jamis killed another to win her, Paul thought. Paul said, If I accept her as servant, may I yet change my mind at a later time? You'd have a year to change your decision, Stilgar said. After that, she's a free woman to choose as she wishes. Or you could free her to choose for herself at any time. But she's your responsibility, no matter what, for 1 year. And you'll always share some responsibility for the sons of Janus. I accept her as servant, Paul said. Hara stamped a foot, shook her shoulders of anger. But I am young. Stilgar looked at Paul. Caution's a worried tree to the man who'd lead. But I am young, Hara repeated. Be silent, Stilgar commanded. If a thing is married, it'll be. Show Usul to his quarters and see he has fresh clothing and a place to rest. Oh, she said. Paul had registered enough of her to have a first approximation. He felt the impatience of the troop, knew many things were being delayed here. He wondered if he dared ask the whereabouts of his mother, and Chani saw from Stilgar's nervous stance that it would be a mistake. He faced her, pitched his voice with tone and tremolo to interfere in awe, said, Show me my quarters, Hera. We will discuss your youth another time. She backed away 2 steps, cast a frightened glance at Stilgar. He has the weirding voice, she husked. Stilgar, Paul said, Chani's father put heavy obligation on me. If there is anything, it'll be decided in council, Stilgar said. You can speak then. He nodded in dismissal, turning away with the rest of the troop following him. Paul took Hera's arm, knowing how cool her flesh seemed, feeling her tremble. I'll not harm you, Hera, he said. Show me your quarters. And he smoothed his voice with relaxance. You'll not cast me out when the year's gone? She said, I know for true I'm not as young as I once was. As long as I live, you'll own a place with me, he said. He released her arm. Come now. Where are her quarters? She turned, led the way down the passage, turning right into a wide cross tunnel, led by unevenly spaced yellow overhead globes. The stone floor was smooth, swept clean of sand. Paul moved up beside her, studied the equine profile as they walked. You do not hate me, Hera? Why should I hate you? She nodded to a cluster of children who stared at them from the raised edge of a side passage. Paul glimpsed adult shapes behind the children, partly hidden by filmy hangings. I bested Jamis. Stilgar said the ceremony was held, and you're a friend of Jamis. She glanced sidelong at him. Stilgar said he gave moisture to the dead. Is that truth? Yes. It's more than I'll do. Can do. Don't you mourn him? In the time of mourning, I'll mourn him. They passed an arched opening. Paul looked through it at men and women working with stand-mounted machinery in a large, bright chamber. There seemed an extra tempo of urgency to them. What are you doing in there? Paul asked. She glanced back as they passed beyond the arch. Said, they hurry to finish the quota in the plastic shop before we flee. We need many dew collectors for the planting. Flee? Until the butchers stop hunting us or are driven from our land. Paul caught himself in a stumble, sensing an arrested instant of time, remembering a fragment, a visual projection of prescience, but was displaced, like a montage in motion. The bits of his prescient memory were not quite as he remembered then. The Sardukar hunt us, he said. They'll not find much except an empty Seitch or two, she said. And they'll find their share of death in the sand. They'll find this place? He asked. Likely. Yet we take the time to... He motioned with his head toward the arch now far behind them. Make dew collectors? The planting goes on. What are dew collectors? Dew collectors? He asked. The glance she turned on him was full of surprise. Don't they teach you anything in the wherever you come from? Not about dew collectors. Ah, she said. And there was a whole conversation in the one word. Well, what are they? Each bush, each weed you see out there in the erg, she said. How do you suppose it lives when we leave it? Each is planted most tenderly in its own little pit. The pits are filled with smooth ovals of plastic, light turns them white. You can see them glistening in the dawn if you look down from a high place. White reflects, but when old Father Sun departs, the chromo-plastic reverts to its transparency in the dark. It cools with extreme rapidity. The surface condenses moisture out of the air. That moisture trickles down to keep our plants alive. Dew collectors. He murmured, enchanted by the simple beauty of such a scheme. I'll warn Jamis in the proper time for it, she said, as though her mind had not left his other question. He was a good man, Jamis, but quick to anger. A good provider, Jamis, and a wonder with the children. He made no separation between Geoff's boy, my firstborn, and his own true son. They were equals in his eyes. She turned a questioning stare on Paul. Would it be that way of usual? We don't have that problem. But if... She recoiled at the harsh edge of his voice. They paused as another brightly lighted room visible through an arch on their left. What's made there? He asked. They repair the waving machinery, she said, but it must be dismantled by tonight. She gestured at a tunnel branching to their left. Through there and beyond, that's food processing and still suit maintenance. She looked at Paul. Your suit looks new. But if it needs work, I'm good with suits. I work in the factory in season. They began coming on knots of people, now in thicker clusterings of openings in the tunnel's sides. A file of men and women passed them, carrying packs that gurgled heavily, the smell of spice strong about them. "They'll not get our water," Hurrah said, "or our spice, you can be sure of that." Paul glanced at the openings of the tunnel walls, seeing the heavy carpets on the raised ledge, glimpses of rooms with bright fabrics on the walls, piled cushions. People in the openings fell silent at their approach, followed Paul with untamed stares. "The people find it strange you bested Jamis," Hurrah said. "Likely you'll have some proving to do when we're settled in a new Seitch. I don't like killing," he said. "Thus Stilgar tells it," she said, but her voice betrayed her disbelief. A shrill chanting grew louder ahead of them. They came to another side opening wider than any of the others Paul had seen. He slowed his pace, staring in a room crowded with Chorns, saying cross-legged on maroon carpeted floor. At a chalkboard against the far wall stood a woman in yellow wrapped around a projectile stylus in one hand. The board was filled with designs: circles, wedges, curves, snake tracks, and squares, flowing arcs split by parallel lines. The woman pointed to the designs one after the other, as fast as she could move the stylus, and the Chorn chanted in rhythm with her moving hand. Paul listened, hearing the voices grow dimmer behind as he moved deeper into the Seitch with Hera. "Tree," the Chorn chanted. "Tree, grass, dune, wind, mountain, hill, fire, lightning, rock, rocks, dust, sand, heat, shelter, winter, cold, empty, erosion, summer, cavern, day, tension, moon, night, caprock, and tide, slope, planting, binder." "You conduct classes at a time like this?" Paul asked. Her face went somber and grief edged her voice. "What Liet taught us, we cannot pause an instant in that. Liet, who is dead, must not be forgotten. It's the Chekopsa way." She crossed the tunnel to the left, stepped up onto a ledge, got on the orange hangs, and stood aside. "Your Yali is ready for you, Usul." Paul hesitated before joining her on the ledge. He felt a sudden reluctance to be alone with this woman. It came to him that he was surrounded by a way of life that could only be understood by postulating an ecology of ideas and values. He felt that this Fremen world was fishing for him, trying to snare him in its ways, and he knew what lay in that snare. The wild jihad, the religious war he felt he should avoid at any cost. "This is your Yali," Hara said. "Why do you hesitate?" Paul nodded, joined her on the ledge. He lifted the hangings across from her, feeling metal fibers in the fabric, followed her into a short entranceway, and then into a larger room, square, about 6 meters to a side, thick blue carpets on the floor, blue and green fabrics hiding the rock walls, glow globes tuned to yellow overhead bobbing against draped yellow ceiling fabrics. The effect was that of an ancient tent. Hara stood in front of him, left hand on hip, her eyes studying his face. "The children are with a friend," she said. "They will present themselves later." Paul masked his unease beneath a quick scanning of the room. Thin hangings to the right, he saw, partly concealed by the larger room, with cushions piled around the walls. He felt a soft breeze from an air duct, saw the outlet cunningly hidden in a pattern of hangings directly ahead of him. "Do you wish me to help you remove your still suit?" Hara asked. "No, thank you." "Shall I bring food?" "Yes." "There is a reclamation chamber off the other room." She gestured. "For your comfort and convenience when you're out of your still suit." "You said we have to leave this siege," Paul said. "Shouldn't we be packing or something?" "It'll be done in its time," she said. "The butchers have yet to penetrate into our region." Still, she hesitated, staring at him. "What is it?" he demanded. "You've not the eyes of the Ibad," she said. "It's strange, but not entirely unattractive." "Get the food," he said. "I'm hungry." She smiled at him, a knowing woman's smile that he found disquieting. "I am your servant," she said, and whirled away in one lithe motion, ducking behind a heavy wall hanging that revealed another passage before falling back into place. Feeling angry with himself, Paul brushed through the thin hanging on the right and into the larger room. He stood there a moment, caught by uncertainty, and he wondered where Shani was. Shani, who had just lost her father. "We're alike in that," he thought. A wailing cry sounded from the outer corridors, its volume muffled by the intervening hangings. It was repeated, a bit more distant, and again. Paul realized someone was calling the time. He focused on the fact that he had seen no clocks. The faint smell of burning creosote bush came to his nostrils, riding on the omnipresent stint into the siege. Paul saw they had already suppressed the odorous assault on his senses. And he wondered again about his mother. how the moving montage of the future would incorporate her and the dar she bore. Multiple time awareness danced around him. He shook his head sharply, focusing his attention on the evidences that spoke of profound depth and breadth in this Fremen culture that had swallowed them with its subtle oddities. He had seen a thing about the caverns in this room, a thing that suggested far greater differences than anything he had yet encountered. There was no sign of a poisoned snooper here, no indication of their use anywhere in the cave warren. Yeah, he could smell poisons in the Seitch stench. Strong ones, common ones. He heard a rustle of hangings, thought it was Hara returning with food, and turned to watch her. Instead, from beneath a displaced pattern of hangings, he saw two young boys, perhaps aged 9 and 10, staring at him with greedy eyes. Each wore a small Kindle type of crysknife, rested by a hand on the hilt. And Paul recalled the stories of the Fremen, that their children fought as ferociously as the adults.